Well, Pete can't make it, but he sends his regrets.
All right, thank you, Tina. Right, all right, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the August 5th meeting of the Planning, Economic Development, and Land Use Committee. Committee members present: Alfredo Ballerin, Joyce Love, Tom Hoey, and I don't see Judy yet, and myself, Kathy Fahey, Chair. Other council members present: Ginny Farrell, Richard Conti, Mike O'Brien. Kelly Kimbrough Flesh is I think he's here. Oh, there he is, I see. Thank you for coming, everyone. We also have staff: John Raphael Pichardo, Michelle Andre, and Danielle Gillespie. Thank you for all your hard work in setting this up. We have a very full agenda tonight. We also have Amy Levine from the Planning Department, and I believe Brad Glass is on his way too. And did I miss any council members? Richard, did I say you? Richard Conti, okay. And Ginny, did I catch Ginny? All right, yeah. So somehow my screen just went black. Why was that? All right, there it is. We're going to start out with our Sustainability Advisory Committee reappointments. And so the first one we'll do is Resolution 697220R, which is the reappointment of Andre Lake as a member of the Sustainability Advisory Committee. Well, welcome, Andre. And Andre has been, hello, has been serving for a while, and we're really pleased, Andre, that you are willing to continue your service. And we'd like to offer you an opportunity to talk a little bit about your service up to this point and why you'd like to continue. And then perhaps some council members may have a question or two for you.
Well, these last couple of years, I've really learned a lot. I first got in there because I had a really a great desire of for renewable energy as far in regards to the city of Albany. Throughout my 2 years, however, I learned that the sustainability has a lot more to do with not just solar, and I'm greatly appreciative of it, of the experiences that I've had. I've learned that there's about about waste, waste and things of that nature, recycling, a big part of it as well. Also, another aspect as well is, and I definitely want to be a little bit more active in as well, I'm starting up, is I want to be able to do something that'll reach out to the underdeveloped communities to have a more sustainable life, not just in renewable energies, but just in life in general, whether it's mental health, whether it's economical wealth, whether it's economic growth, so on and so forth. All of that could make a more sustainable life in Albany, and that's something that I definitely want to continue to strive to do that in this in my next couple of years in service.
Okay, thank you. Questions by, we'll start with committee members. Or questions or comments? Let's see. All right, well, looks like, well,
it looks like Councilmember Ballerin has his hand raised for a quick question. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you very much. It's Alfredo, thank you. Go ahead. You have to unmute.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm on a cell phone commercial. Mr. Lake, I wanted to just thank you again for taking volunteering more of your time to work on our committee. I think that's very honorable of you. In the time that you've been on the committee, are there any things that you see that could be resources that we can give as a council or as a city to strengthen the committee's mission?
Okay, well, going back to what I mentioned before, as far as community outreach is concerned, definitely getting some of the leaders and more involved, like especially with the youth, because one of the things I want to definitely do is teach the youth a little bit more about how to live a sustainable life with the goals that I mentioned to you before, whether it's economical wealth, renewable energy, or so on and so forth, just reaching out. So pretty much, to me, that's one of the things that I would definitely look out for, is to seeking out leaders in the communities to work with them more, be more active with them as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, is there a motion on the floor? Alfredo, you want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Andre Lake, please.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. You're reappointed, and the term of reappointment will expire June 30th, 2023. Andre,
Okay.
thank you again for your service. It's greatly appreciated.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
very
Andre.
much. Thank you very much.
Okay, and next I want to turn to Tina Lieberman's reappointment, and that is resolution 717220R. And Tina is the current chair of the Sustainability Advisory Committee. So first of all, Tina, thank you for your service, and thank you for your willingness to chair this committee. It's that's really generous of you, of your time and your talents. I should point out too that Tina, the advisory committee has been working on a report which will be submitted soon. And I thought that was a good time for us to have another meeting and have a conversation about some of the things the Sustainability Advisory Committee has been doing and some of their future plans. So we will do that, within the next weeks. So welcome, Tina. Thank you for your willingness to continue serving on the committee. And I just want to give you a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about what you have been doing and what why you'd like to be reappointed. And you have, okay, good.
Okay. Yeah, first step is to unmute. So Pete was chair till April, and then he needed to step down, and I was vice chair, so he asked if I would take over. So I said okay, and then the board voted me in to that position. So it's certainly been a very interesting learning experience. And then of course the annual report was due, so that fell into my lap. So and we were regrouping also because COVID had just happened. So everything took a little bit to get our feet on the ground and figure out how to hold our meetings, but we didn't miss a meeting. So I'll say that was like the first meeting I took over was the first Zoom meeting, and we got Zoom bombed, which was quite the experience. So from there, there's a few things I'd really like to be doing as chair, and what I have started working on. One is greater communication with the Common Council and the mayor's office. So I definitely want to come to your these committee meetings, because Kathy indicated this is the best way to tell you what we're doing. So if I could come once a month or once every other month, or send a designee to let you know what we're up to, I'd really appreciate that, because I think the communication certainly could be stronger between us. And I think when it is stronger and I get your feedback, then I'll understand, how to move forward, and we can all kind of be on the same page in moving forward. I did invite, I'm just forgetting his name, Peter Iwanowitz, to our last meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Committee. He's on the Governor's Climate Action panel for moving ahead with the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. And as you might know, there's there are many wonderful greenhouse gas reduction goals part of that, and it's a 40% reduction greenhouse gas emission goal by 2030. That's a 10-year plan. So that's something that we're going to be working on in our subcommittees, is how can we attempt to reach that goal and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So a lot of things are going to follow from that. And trying to get every subcommittee to put together some concrete goals for that. And Jason, our new energy manager, is going to work on figuring, he's working on a green, we haven't updated our greenhouse gas emission inventory since 2012. So he's working on a 2019 one to see what kind of emissions we're putting out. And so then we can look at how to reduce them from there and kind of have a benchmark for where we want to go. So those are some of the things I've been working on. And I guess the last one is we just had a meeting yesterday with Jason. We're looking at revising the bylaws, and we'd like to see if we can get consensus to meet monthly instead of every other month, because we just lose way too much momentum when we meet every other month. And Andre, I talked with Andre last night, and he's on board because he feels the same way. It just takes too long, to regroup and move forward. And we are looking at Eva from the Outreach Subcommittee is working on a memorandum of understanding with the SUNY Albany. So we anticipate having, as part of our change to the bylaws, we anticipate having non-voting members join our subcommittee, and those would be students and potentially some staff, maybe some overseeing staff from SUNY Albany, because they want to work on sustainability too. So that's in progress. We're very excited about some of those things to strengthen our subcommittee.
It's terrific. Okay, I'm going to turn to committee members first. If you have any comments or questions for Tina. And I should point out Judy Doche is here, who's a member of our planning committee. Judy, did I see your hand?
I just want to thank Tina for all of the work that she does for us in this area and the energy that she brings to it. She's out in the field. I've seen her doing recycling at events, helping to make them zero waste, which I think is a great goal. And I appreciate your taking on the leadership role. We know the extra burden that goes along with that, and I just wanted to thank you for being willing to continue in this capacity. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other, Alfredo?
Thank you again, Tina, for your service. I can't let you go without a question. Can't make it too easy. I have a lot of background in education, and a very impressive resume with your educational background and where you work. Has there been any discussion with the school district on how they can be more efficient and also put more lesson plans into sustainability in the curriculum?
Yeah, actually, as part of the energy subcommittee, we did meet with Guida Adams, the current superintendent, and her curriculum director. And they said that their curriculum, I guess it's fairly new, but this was already 2 years ago we met with them. They said that there were sustainability parts of the curriculum. Now, if those get covered, honestly, I don't know. I did see the curriculum director like maybe about 8 months ago at a school concert. And I asked her about doing some pilot composting at a school, because I think that when a school starts to compost and their food scraps at lunchtime, it really, it sets a kind of a tone and an agenda, and it leads to a lot of other sustainability issues. I think it's a good hands-on way to start. And she did indicate interest. She said it has to come from the bottom up. It's not going to come from the top down, which means there has to be a school or two where the staff want to take it on and the kids want to take it on, right? So after that, I was in touch with, I know this is probably a longer answer than you want, but the Raddick Sustainability Center, there's an educator there, Kate, I believe her name is Kate or Kat. So she's working with the Delaware school, and they're starting to compost, and like the compost goes to a community garden. So those kind of go together, like they have a backyard garden there. So I like, at least there's someone kind of hands-on working, but I'd like to re-meet with the school district, the curriculum director particularly, and see if that needs to be formalized in any way. But that's what's happening so far. We do know the Delaware Community School is doing something. And it would be nice to see if we can make that more formal and at least do a pilot that way. And then I should check and see exactly what are they covering in the curriculum. And I know, of course, with COVID-19, you know, they're not covering a lot in the curriculum right now. Basically, you know, they're looking at an abbreviated curriculum. So all good questions, Alfredo, and definitely worth pursuing.
Okay, comments, questions by any other council members that haven't had an opportunity to speak? Jenny.
I just wanted to thank both Tina and Andre for being willing to serve. And I also, Tina, you did mention Delaware, but I know when my kids are at Montessori, we did a whole composting thing there too. So I don't know if they're doing it or not. My kids are well past that age, but there was a pretty strong we had a recycling program too, but there was like a big composting thing there.
So then that basically could also be a formal pilot school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the teacher that spearheaded it is still there, and she will absolutely kill me if she's not composting anymore. But I know she cares about it, so I could hook you up if you want.
I would like that. Thank you.
Judy, did I see your hand? Another comment?
I was wondering if Tina was familiar with the vegetable project that is at the Harriet and Stephen Myers Middle School. And they have a lot of land there, and William Stoneman is in charge of that particular project, or spearheads that particular project. I think anything that helps, children grow food can be beneficial, and that lends itself to the composting, as you say. The other place that has a lot of land near it that I think would be great to get more use for growing food, and composting would be an option, is Arbor Hill Elementary School. I know that they've planted some fruit trees near there, but there's a lot of potential opportunity. Unlike my school, New Scotland Elementary School, there's no land to speak of at it. They have done a little bit out in the front with gardening, but it's not sufficient for that kind of project. So the Myers and Arbor Hill, I think, are two potentially prime schools for outreach to on this kind of topic.
Sounds good. Does anyone have a contact at Arbor Hill working with the kids in the gardening or anything like that? If you do, let me know, okay?
Okay, is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion to move the resolution for Tina, which is
71, 72.
.20R forward with a positive recommendation.
A second?
Second.
Okay, second by Tom Hoey. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, unanimous. Thank you very much, Tina. And this appointment expires June 30th, 2021. And I should ask you, Pete Sheehan, he's not here tonight. Did we know that he wasn't going to be here, Michelle? I'm not sure. Now, Pete does want to continue serving, as far as you know, Tina?
Yes, he told me to tell you. He just texted me. He couldn't make it. And he said,
Okay.
please tell the committee that he would like to continue. He's the Energy Subcommittee chair, and he's vice chair, and, works with me a lot.
Okay, very good. And Pete has been on the Sustainability Advisory Committee since 2014. Any thoughts by committee members as far as the reappointment?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Kathy?
Any thoughts about reappointing Pete, even though he was not able to be here tonight?
Well, he's been an active member of the committee. Tina is, while he stepped down from leadership, has there been any issues with his attendance at the meetings?
No, he's great, and he helped me with the annual report. We split it up and we did all that work. So he's actively involved. I think he just wanted to focus on the work for the Energy Subcommittee, because there's a lot to do there with greenhouse gas reductions and getting, a new inventory, greenhouse gas emission inventory for the city, getting all the city buildings covered in, and I guess there's a software from NYPA that we use, and it only covers 11 buildings so far. We want to add to that. So he's got a lot of work on his plate right now, and that's good that he can focus.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you. So I certainly, Pete has been out there advocating on different issues, and he, brings a lot of it, and I know that he's enthusiastic about this. I just want to make sure that, from Tina's perspective or somebody else's perspective, that we're not nominating somebody who is not actually attending the meetings, because that's important to make sure that there is the ability to have a quorum and move the work forward. So I would like to make a recommendation that pending his appearance before the council at caucus, that whether that be this Wednesday or the before the Monday meeting, that we move his resolution, which is 70.72.20R, forward with a positive recommendation.
Okay, is there a second on that? Oh, second by Joyce Love. Discussion. Richard, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think that Judy was making the point, though. I just wanted to note that under the rules, he would have to appear before the council, or the council would have to waive the appearance. So if he were to come on at our next caucus, that would be fine.
Okay, thank you. All right, Joyce, you seconded. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. It's unanimous, and Pete's reappointment's approved. And Michelle, if you could reach out to him and invite him to an upcoming caucus.
What time is that on Monday?
6:30. Well, the next one is Wednesday, actually, right? When's our next?
It's next week from Wednesday, a week from today at 5:30.
Okay, so that would be the 12th, Tina, at 5:30. All right. Thank you again to Andre and Tina, and we'll move on now to Ordinance. Let's see here. 106120. The sponsor is Joyce Love, and
Say
I'll
good night.
just good night. That is changing the zoning classification of 180 Sheridan Avenue from townhouse to mixed-use community urban. and amending the zoning map accordingly. And Joyce, you want to tell us a little bit about this zoning amendment, proposed zoning amendment? We got to unmute.
Muted.
Okay, it's a house that Miss West owned next door to the Interfaith shelter down on 180 Sheridan Avenue. And her wishes was that the house go to not be sold to Interfaith when the time comes. So what they want to do is they want to take down a wall because the house is adjoined to their building. And they want to take out the wall and do some construction and use that as an office also. It's no big deal. Her sons wanted to make it an Airbnb, but I don't think that would fly. I don't think so. But
and this is Interfaith Partnership for the Homeless, was it?
Correct. They're going to use it as an office.
Okay. So maybe we can turn to the planning department. And this is something you support, Joyce, right? So
Correct.
We turn to the planning department. Brad Glass is here. Brad, do you want to tell us a little bit more about this project and this amendment?
I think Luis was going to speak to this one, actually. Luis.
Oh, okay. Oh, Louis. Okay, very good. Welcome,
Hi.
Louis.
Hi, it's Luis.
Luis.
Yes. Yep. So we sent out the spreadsheet or the PowerPoint presentation for this for zoning map amendment 0004. I believe it came out through the planning board as a positive or as a recommendation. There was not. It will be compliant with our zoning ordinance when it is changed over to the proposed mixed-use community center or community urban zoning classification, and yeah, that would result in a conforming structure. So, if there are any other questions you guys had regarding this project, I can try to answer that.
Are we going to go through the PowerPoint just to talk a little bit more about the project?
If you wanted to do that, we could. It was just a couple of slides, really just went over the visual element of it, but I can share the screen and if you can go through it if you like.
Excuse me, I'm not, Michelle, when did you send this to us, the PowerPoint?
I did not receive a PowerPoint.
Oh.
I can put it up if you like. It was not earlier this afternoon, but if you like, I can share the screen and just go through it.
That would be great, because I think people would want to know a little bit more about the area where this zone change is going to take place.
Sure. I'm going to pull it up now. Can everyone see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm just going to advance the slide. One sec. There we go. Okay, so this is just an introductory slide. It is currently in a residential townhouse district, and the proposal as it stands would not be compliant in the current zoning district, so the proposal to change it to a mixed-use community urban would make the structure compliant. Multiple structures are allowed in a mixed-use district, whereas in a residential townhouse district, you can only have one property or one primary structure on a lot. So the existing zoning is on the left side here. I'm not sure if you can see it, but you can kind of tell where it is with the right side. If you can see my mouse here, you can see the red outline over 180 where the proposed zoning amendment would be. That would make all that you see in teal be the mixed-use community urban. And 180 right now on the left is a residential townhouse, and the proposal would be a mixed-use community urban. This is an overview of what the structure looks like compared to the current interfaith partnership for the homeless structure now. You can tell that the house here on 180 does have a slightly different appearance from the partnership for the homeless, but with a mixed-use community urban zoning district. Multiple primary structures would be an allowed use, and the conversion of this from a residence to an office would be allowed as well. Those are both uses that would not necessarily be allowed quite as easily in a residential townhouse district. And this
Is it currently occupied?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, and questions from other council members? Committee members first, please.
Kathy?
Judy, go ahead.
Yeah. How far down does the mixed-use community urban go? Does it include the New Jerusalem Home of the Saved Church?
Do you know what the address to that is?
Yes. It's I can't see the number, but it's closer to the corner with South Swan.
Okay.
So it's that sort of not the immediate corner parcel, but yeah, right next to that.
Okay.
L parcel.
Right. So the teal would be mixed-use community urban, so that would be included in that parcel, in that zoning district.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
we do have. It's important that we do have quite a bit of mixed-use community urban all around that particular area.
Can you serve
That was.
Tina? Yes.
Yeah. You know, I wanted to make sure that this was not sort of a isolated disruptive to the flow. Do you have the decision, Kathy? Usually you don't put things on the agenda until you've required us to have the actual planning board decision.
You know, I do have, they have, there is a planning board decision. It was favorable. It's, I don't believe it was ever sent out to us. However, it is on the case application, case file. It's a case file.
It was sent.
0012.
It was sent out.
Oh, it was, okay. Well,
Just put it up if you.
so was it quite a while ago, or?
No, actually, I'm looking at.
It was sent with the
Michelle.
agenda. I'm sorry.
Oh, February 25th. All right, so it was a while ago. So so this has been sitting for a while? I see it says February 25th.
I mean, we had some dialogue with John Raphael a while back, but then the whole COVID situation came up, and you know, this kind of fell by the wayside a little bit, and there were some more pertinent matters the council had to deal with. So I think that's generally what cause of the delay was.
And there wasn't an urgency by Interfaith Partnership to get this?
Well, I wouldn't say that. They're very anxious to. They've been very anxious to get this on the agenda, and so they can begin work with that conversion. I believe they're working with Landmark Preservation Consulting on that.
Okay.
And we had to wait on the Albany County Planning Board on this, since this is within a certain distance.
Oh yes, right. And that was sent out, and that was also favorable.
So that was my other question is, with regard to the process, I'm a little confused about what the process is when it comes to a rezoning and what findings or standards we need to.
Yes, and
I just want to be clear. I'm very supportive of this. It's I just, think, you know, I want to make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things I sent out, again, it was late today, Michelle sent out, was the review standards that we need to look at whenever there's a zoning map or text amendment. So I don't know if we have that to put up at all. It looks like a little hard to see, unfortunately. No, it's not that one. We have the next page, Michelle, by any chance? Okay, so there's the review standards that we need to look at when we're talking about when we're reviewing these zoning map or zoning text changes, amendments. Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? And you know, answers to these are also in the planning board decision, right? Is that correct, Brad, the way you got it set up?
I don't know if they're articulated in the decision. You know, we did write a supporting justification, I believe that's in some of that speaks to some of them. I mean, just to speak sort of generically.
The findings, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, to speak sort of generically, you know, the fact that there is an adjacent MUC district is certainly, you know, something that, you know, we probably wouldn't have pursued this or necessarily endorsed this in this manner had it not been immediately adjacent. There's also a row of habitat buildings that were recently infilled in the adjacent RT district that sort of created an alleyway between those buildings, and this is the only house that's sort of on that more institutionally oriented block where Interfaith and the church are. So, you know, we felt that there was a, you know, a distinctive break between the building fabric there. And then, you know, with respect to a demonstrated need, you know, there was a turnover in property ownership. And I think that generally the Interfaith is potentially a more desirable use than would have occurred. And I think it fits in well with their activities there. Glad they were willing to take it on. Sometimes you know, it's unsure when that ownership happened or when did Councilwoman Love, did Miss West pass away? Do you know?
Yes, she did.
Okay, I think I thought that was the issue, but yeah, sometimes when that occurs, properties end up in a prolonged period of you know, we really don't know what's going to happen with them. So I think having someone lined up to step in and, you know, put this property to use is something that you know.
Yeah, because she had two sons that used to come in and out, but they didn't want the house. They would, like I said, they talked to me about turning it into an Airbnb, and I just can't see that down in that area right there. So they moved on and sold it to wanted to sell it to Interfaith. So Interfaith bought it.
So getting back to Judy's comments about the process, I agree we've got to really kind of formalize this a bit more, but those review standards are we need to go through each one of those to make sure it you know, take a look at that and make sure that it complies. And then the other part was the seeker. And John Raphael, I know you had sent an email out earlier, was helpful. The council has a role with part 2 in the seeker process there, Brad.
Yeah, you know, we'd be happy in this case, provided, you know, since we're we're the ones that initially, you know, put this forward. And granted, I did speak with Joyce very early on in the process. We would be happy to, you know, complete the part 2 and 3. I don't think it's particularly complicated in this case. The council would need to endorse that, or, you know, if you preferred, we're not involved. Either way, we're happy to be of assistance.
Okay, and
I'm sorry. Could you clarify? So there's a step in the seeker process that we have not yet completed that we need to complete, Brett?
Correct. The applicant generally completes part 1, and then the lead agency, or in this case, there's only one involved agency, which is the council, is responsible for completing parts 2 and 3 of the seeker forms. The planning board in this case is just recommending, so they're not making a discretionary decision, you know, that would qualify under seeker, making them involved. So it would be the council that would be adopting the seeker findings in conjunction with their action on the zoning amendment.
So frankly, so I'm looking at these standards and I'm wondering if to sort of, since this has been sitting, if it's possible for me to recite some of these findings here and pass this out of committee with a favorable recommendation pending completion of the rest of the seeker review. And I'd be willing to recite those and have that then be officially written up and be part of the record of the motion if people would like that to happen at this meeting. Otherwise, it sounds to me like we got to come back.
Right. Okay, any other committee members first, comments on this? Any other comments by
I have something to really just.
JR? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Brad, real quick, because on the recommendation from the planning board, there's language right there that says that it doesn't affect the environment, the light. When is that a initial recommendation from the planning board issuing a neg deck declaration? And if so, what type 1 or type 2?
No, I believe in this case, this is an unlisted action, and I believe the planning board does not have a role in the seeker process for this particular application because they're merely a recommending party. The only party that we've identified, there's no grant funding that I'm aware of that is an involved agency under seeker would be the Common Council, who's responsible for making any zoning map or text amendment final decisions. So as the applicant, we completed the part 1 form, which, you know, typically for a zone change and a map amendment, the part 1 is very simple and straightforward. I should say depending on the case, but in this case, it was pretty straightforward. There were a couple questions to complete, and it essentially says, you know, attach a written narrative or something similar. And then the part 2 goes through whether it will have an impact in the various different ways that seeker applies. It's a check.
I understand, Brad. I just wanted to make sure, because this is what's in the planning board decision right here, will avoid significant adverse impacts on the natural environment. I'm just wondering if this is the planning board's recommendation in terms of a declaration.
No, I believe that's merely reciting the standards from the code for USDO text amendment. I believe that's one of the standards that needs to be applied.
Okay, if nothing else, Judy, I think your motion makes sense pending the completion of part 2 and 3. And Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. I mean, this does require a public hearing also, and I'm wondering what the status of the hearing is.
I haven't scheduled a public hearing because it hadn't come out of committee yet. If it came out of committee with a favorable recommendation, then I would start looking at the calendar, because this particular one requires notification of the property owners that are within the square footage of the proposed change. So I'm waiting with bated breath to see what the next step should be.
Okay. You know, just an observation there. There was a time when we would do a public hearing when these zoning amendments were introduced, so that the committee could have the benefit of the public comment on it. So I don't know why we sometimes wait this long, but we sort of like have reversed the process we had in the past.
That does seem to make a lot of sense. Yeah. So then we could have conversation about anything brought up that we weren't aware of. But for this particular ordinance, I think we'll go ahead. But I think that's a good idea for us to look at that, have that public hearing earlier in the process. All right, Judy, did you want to restate your? Go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry. Tom, do you have a comment or no?
I was going to second Judy.
Oh, okay, Jude.
Well, I think Richard raises an interesting question. Is it premature for the committee to be taking action on it without having the committee, without having the hearing? Richard, you're saying that we're doing it in reverse.
Yeah, I think this is a non-controversial ordinance in any event. So I would go ahead and move it out of committee. But I think moving forward, we should really get back to that process of trying, as soon as something is introduced, have the hearing, get that out of the way. But the committee, you always have the option, if there's some controversy at the hearing, to reconsider. But I think this is a non-controversial rezone. So it's been delayed as it is. So I would move it out of committee with the favorable recommendation. Understand it still has to have the public hearing. But I wouldn't delay consideration based on that.
All right. So Kathy, what I would like to do is have people looking at the standards that are part of the USDO as I
recite my motion and my findings, I think.
All right, Michelle, can you put that up, please? Or Danielle, I'm not sure who's at the helm here.
So do you want to, what part of the USDO is it? And
It's,
I'll
it is what I sent over earlier to Michelle. It's the review standards. It's section 375-5E and then section 24.
I'll pull it up. I have the whole USDO.
24 is C, the review standards.
Oh, yes, C. We did have it up a little earlier. Michelle, that was one of those.
This?
That's it.
Review standards. All right, so I would like a motion, I would like to make a motion to move ordinance, let me see, which one is hers? Okay, 10.21.20 out of committee with a favorable recommendation pending completion of the seeker forms and findings. And I would like for the record to reflect that the committee has reviewed the standards contained in section in the USDO section 375-5E24C, which requires amending that any amendment consider and weigh the relevance of whether and the extent to which the proposed amendments and A is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and we find that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, whether it conflicts with any other provisions of the USDO and the code of the city of Albany, and we have identified no such conflicts, and I just okay. It's required, is it whether it's required by changed conditions? And we find that it is required by changed conditions because the owner has become deceased, and that the interfaith partnership for, is it the homeless? Is that the name of it? Is interested in, adjoins this property and is interested in using it for office uses, which then requires a change in the zoning. That there is a demonstrated community need, as we prefer for this building not to be left vacant and for it to be used for a good purpose, in this case for a not-for-profit organization to meet and perform its good functions in the community. That it would improve the compatibility amongst uses and would ensure efficient development within the city. We note that this particular property adjoins other, many other properties in the immediate area that are also zoned MU, excuse me.
Community urban.
MU-CU areas. And because it does adjoin those other MU-CU areas, it would result in a logical and orderly development pattern and would not upset that pattern and would not be any kind of spot zoning. And we have identified no adverse impacts on the natural environment, including any effects to water, air, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, vegetation, wetlands, and the natural functioning of the environment, because the planned use is going to maintain the structure, the same structure on the site. In addition, so that is requirements for changes to the zoning map and the text, we are also required to review the zoning map amendments, additional standards, whether this is compatible with existing and proposed uses surrounding the subject land and is appropriate zoning district for the land. As we have noted in our discussions, the surrounding area is significantly already zoned as MU/CU, so it would be appropriate zoning for this land. And it would result, and then the second criteria for zoning map is amendments says it would result in development that is adequately served by public facilities, streets, potable water, sewage, stormwater management, solid waste collection and disposal, schools, parks, police, and fire and emergency medical facilities. Since this, the specific building is not changing, and the use is not significantly burdensome, an increase in the burden to any of those services being provided by the committee, I would have us find that this is adequately served by such public facilities with the changed use. So with those findings, that I asked be part of the official record for our consideration of this ordinance, I recommend it be passed out of committee contingent upon completion of the further seeker review. Before I close my motion, is there anything anybody else from the planning department or Richard or Joyce or anybody want to add to what I have made as findings? And JR, that's for you too.
Let's get a second and then we can have any discussion.
I think you covered it all, Judy.
Okay, Tom seconded. Any additional discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you, everyone. And that was the longest motion I've heard yet. But it, makes sense in this case.
Kathy, I do want to say that what I just did here is something that would be helpful if we included that kind of thing, I think, in the supporting memorandum as proposed findings for the committees, so that we can, when we're looking to move something out of committee that is already written, and then we can just refer to the findings.
Oh, okay. Very good idea.
Recommendation.
All right. So JR, maybe you can help with that in the future with these zoning amendments. Okay. So we're going to move on now to Ordinance 116120. That's an ordinance of the Code of City of Albany in relation to parking lots in mixed use community urban zoned districts. And Councilmember Kimbrough is the sponsor of the legislation. And Councilmember Kimbrough, could you talk a little bit about why you're bringing this ordinance this legislation forward?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
You're a little low.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better? Is that better? Okay, so yeah, Cap Rep is moving over to 251 North Pearl Street from their current location. And there was a couple of lots up the block that was supposed to be the Asian market from years ago. I don't know if some of you folks remember, but it's been sitting dormant. They tore down all these houses. It's overgrown. And Cap Rep wants to use that spacing for some either out or storage buildings and parking. The zoning change would allow for them to do that. It was proposed by planning, but I wholeheartedly support it. I lived across the street when they tore down all those buildings. And it's been a lot ever since, and it's since the late 90s. So I support this. This is big and good for that neighborhood and the community. And with that, I'll turn it over to Luis and Brad, because this is something they brought forth.
Yeah, thank you for picking it up. I did have a PowerPoint, if I can pull that up and go through that as quickly as I can.
And I get a feeling we're probably going to have a similar discussion to the last piece of legislation with this one.
Yeah, so this is Cap Rep's new location that they're going to be moving into, currently under construction at 255 North Pearl Street. And there's this lot just up the block that's been historically underutilized. It does abut the railroad tracks, so that may have something to do with it. There's also quite a bit of a grade change. We looked at this and we saw the proposal from Cap Rep, and the first thing we looked at was, is this a variance? The zoning board has been particularly difficult on use variances by applying those legal standards, which are very difficult in the case of use variances. And we just felt, there are other vacant properties around that are similar in certain circumstances. We didn't feel this was a particularly, unique case in terms of the land itself. Certainly the Cap Rep is a unique institution, but we're talking about the land when we're talking about a zoning change. So we felt that, we did feel though that the Cap Rep's proposal was sound and good, that, we're dealing with a building that is completely landlocked, was developed many years ago, and doesn't have the ability to accommodate any on-site parking. And this is a community, a mixed-use community urban district. There are a number of buildings in these types of districts, which exist not only at this location, but other areas in the city that have similar circumstances. So we thought, well, why don't we look at putting together a zoning text amendment that would allow for parking to be located off-site in certain circumstances in these types of districts. And I'll get into what those particular circumstances that we felt were appropriate are. This is the corner of the site. Looking at it now, obviously it does not look too attractive. They're going to be bringing some investment in cleaning this up and adding additional lighting in this area. As you can see in the MUCU district now, parking lot is an accessory use. That means it's only allowed on the same site as a principal use. In this case, this would be a site up the block, in which case there's no other use planned for the site currently. So parking would become a principal use of that property, which currently is not an allowed use. This is what the Cap Rep had proposed. We kind of asked to look at them. They were looking to accommodate 50 cars. It's a large site, and I think someday it would be nice to have buildings there, not only to increase the vibrancy of the area, but to add to our tax base. And we looked at where could you put the site on the parking lot on the lot, where maybe we could still accommodate street front buildings and kind of reinforce that walkable character of the district. And these are kind of the options they gave us. And one of the things that we're really looking for is to keep that option open to put those buildings up at the street. So we're thankful they were willing to come to the table in this particular instance. And that allowed us to write this ordinance, this text amendment, so that, in the future, if this were to apply at another site, the planning board could consider in making we would not make this a permitted use, we would make it a conditional use in this zone. So they would require conditional use approval of the planning board to proceed with this plan or one of these plans. And the planning board could consider in making that conditional use determination whether we should leave open the possibility for liner buildings. In this case, as seen here in options 1 and, well, it looks like they're all option 1 actually. Anyways, the option at the top right and lower left, I think would generally satisfy what we're looking to accomplish. The one on the lower right, a little bit less so. I believe the one that they're seeking to pursue is the top right, and that would be what they would be bringing to the planning board. Just to show you,
Brad, could you just go back to that again?
Yes.
So how far setback is that from the street? Not very much, right?
The parking lot, you're saying?
Right.
Correct. That would be right up to the street as it's shown on these diagrams.
Okay.
I think an ideal option would be the option in the lower lower left or something similar. However, I think they want to make sure there's visibility to their lot. And I think that there's also a significant grade change that may make that option more expensive. So we just assume leave it to the planning board on a case-by-case basis to sort of make the determination of what is appropriate for that particular site. And I think in the case of this site, we would be comfortable as a staff recommending the planning board endorsing, one of the two proposals that I showed in the top right or the lower left.
I don't want to delay. I want to do a logical review, but the reason why I'm focusing in on that is because the proposal that you're making says that it needs to be designed in such a way that does not foreclose the possibility of linear buildings being constructed along any street frontage. So when you're doing a parking lot, it is basically what you're saying. When you're doing a parking lot, it's really not particularly burdensome to remove the parking lot, and in the future, if buildings became viable in that particular location, is that?
Yeah, typically we like to see the parking placed behind the buildings or within the buildings at a site, particularly in the more urban neighborhoods. So we wanted to make sure that there was a thought process going into what may be a potential option in the future, rather than just plopping the parking lot on the corner in the most visible location and then potentially preventing a building from being constructed there in the future.
But in this particular case, so if you said, does the location of the parking lot here prevent?
Are you asking if the top right conflicts with the language that I'm using, or that's in the amendment?
Uh-huh.
I think I admittedly you could read it that way. Maybe we want to soften that language a bit, but I think you could also read it that the option's not foreclosing the possibility for liner buildings. I mean, the liner building, it's not just saying has to take up the entire frontage of the property. In this case, they are showing, 2/3 of the frontage that could be, could accommodate future buildings, and just 1/3 where the parking area is. So I see the point that maybe we need a little bit more clarity or to soften that, but I think you can make the argument that the top right is compliant as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I'm going to skip this. This was just showing that, we do similar things with setbacks for parking in some of our form-based code zones. So this already is something that we practice in other districts in the city. And then again, just reading one of the things we talked about was the liner buildings. We also wanted to make sure that the parking is needed, that it's just not, it means to just build extra parking beyond what is otherwise needed to be accommodated. In this case, the cap rep is unable to accommodate on site, which is why they're seeking off-site location. I think that's an important consideration. And then we also, didn't want buildings necessarily getting demolished to create these off-site parking lots. So, we wanted to put something in there that spoke to the demolition of buildings that do have an economically viable reuse, not being torn down in the creation of these off-site parking lots. So the proposal here is to change that A as an accessory use to a C in the permitted use table. And then the three items that I just stated as terms of the things that the planning board could consider, in addition to the traditional conditional use permit considerations, would be placed under that use specific standards section to the far right column. So that tells you that whenever you're doing a parking lot, you do have to read those use specific standards as well. And it's going to speak particularly to this MUCU district. And then I just did a map here to show where MUCU districts are located throughout the city. Just to clarify that while this is, in this instance, serving to accommodate the Capitol Reps parking lot, there are other areas in the city that this zoning change would apply to. I don't believe we're currently aware of any other proposals. And I think having reviewed some of the other areas, I don't think it's likely that this is going to happen in abundance. I think it's a relatively unique situation. It probably won't be the only situation, but certainly in evaluating those districts, I was comfortable putting forward the recommendation in this case. And this I just was speaking to kind of the reasons why we're just doing this in MUCU. We don't do it in every district. You know, the intensity of parking lot uses in that district, MUCU. You know, we don't require parking provisions in the downtown area as accessory to construction, but we do in the MUCU. And there are some areas where the MUCU is very similar to the downtown in terms of its historic fabric. It's larger scale buildings that are accommodating uses like theaters or like the Capitol Reparatory Theater that do have a parking demand. And again, the land values here tend to be higher. So I think that, you know, it's more appropriate than some other districts where someone might just try and snatch up lots at a relatively low value and pursue a proposal that maybe we don't want to see. So we'd be open and consider expanding this in the future, but in this case, we decided just to keep this as MUCU. And then we also, just in cleaning up the code here, and I apologize because the pictures of the video view is blocking some of the text here. So I'm just going to turn that down for a minute here. And really, this is just cleaning up another section of the code that speaks to offsite parking. That currently it said, you know, in the mixed use districts, we're just changing that to write where allowed as a permitted or conditional use, because frankly, it's not a true statement. In some of the mixed use districts, we really don't allow offsite parking as a principal use in the permitted use table. And then offsite parking for a non-residential use shall not be located in a residential zoning district unless the use for which the parking is provided is a permitted or conditional use in the residential zone district. We're proposing to take that out as well. Sorry, it's been quite a while since I put this together, so.
Ed, can you go back to the map
Yes.
of the other MUCU?
Yes, there you go.
So is that Albany Med, that area down?
It is not Albany Med. It is. It would include the VA Medical Center. Well, excuse me, the Albany Medical Center, the South Clinical Campus.
Okay.
Also the McDonald's on Holland Avenue and the area around the Walgreens.
Okay, I see. And
it does include part of Lower New Scotland, correct? From Dana Avenue going south.
That's correct.
Okay. And there is some, I don't think anything in that area would be impacted. There is a vacant or parking lots in that area, but.
There's a small vacant lot at the corner of Morris and New Scotland, but I don't believe you could really construct parking there without a lot, you know, while accommodating a potential for a liner building, for instance.
Oh. Okay, thank you. I just want to get a sense, you know, where else these could be placed without going through the BZA process, the variance.
That's a very interesting observation there, Kathy, but I'm also looking at the green blob immediately above that, which is my old stomping ground, a lot of my old stomping grounds, Sheridan Hollow. And as we just noted in the other zoning text amendment, that, you know, that includes, like, you know, Sheridan, where we were just talking about. And you know, frankly, I've always been a little disturbed, and Joyce, you'll need to chime in if you have a different opinion about this, but I've always been a little disturbed about how the highest and best use of so many of the properties in that area seems to be tearing down buildings and just putting up one crummy parking lot with no landscaping, you know, after another to accommodate state workers, I think, predominantly. So I do have a little bit of a concern about having, you know, the impact of this zoning amendment on things like that and how we can improve it. Joyce, do you have a similar concern about, you know, blacktop heaven for state workers in Sheridan Hollow?
What's the question again? I'm sorry.
I was asking Joyce.
Joyce here. Still here, Joyce? Let's see.
Maybe
I don't,
she's not.
I don't
maybe
see
she's not.
her at the moment.
She's frozen.
It's a pretty warm day to be frozen. So
Judy, while we're waiting for Joyce, could I just speak to that real quickly?
Sure, go ahead, Brett.
sure, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think that's why, for instance, we are not
there she
proposing
is.
it to be principally permitted. We're proposing it as conditionally permitted, and we're providing some of those criteria for the planning board to consider, because frankly, we don't want to see that happen either.
Right.
That's.
So I would like, I'm looking at the criteria and I'm wondering if it needs to be strengthened with regards to the response to a demonstrable need of the use or uses to be served. I'm wondering if what we really mean to be doing here is when a nearby property is going to be developed. So we really want to be, I think we're doing this, the reason why we're even looking at this is because it facilitates development of another vacant property. So something that is connected with the development of a increased usage, I want to say, and development of a nearby property. Is that not your goal, Brett, more or less? As opposed to an existing building and, so.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't object to that addition. I mean, I guess I could see circumstances where it could occur, that not being the case and still be a favorable outcome, but it certainly wouldn't dissuade me from supporting the amendment. I mean, I think I mean, I think part of what we did write in regarding, it has to be serving a demonstrable parking need. So, I mean, I guess that could be for an existing use that's not facilitating. But I mean, I don't have any problem if you wanted to add that in. I mean,
So I'm wondering if instead of saying response to a demonstrable parking need of the use or uses to be served, a demonstrable need of a proposed new development or increased usage of existing.
Can we put up the ordinance so that the others can follow where you are there, Judy?
Sure. Do you want me to take down the PowerPoint? I'll just.
Are you pretty much done there?
Yeah,
Brad?
yeah. Let me just. Okay.
So down at number 1 there, Judy, response to a demand. Do you want to say again what you would hope to substitute there?
Yeah, I'm working on the language here. So instead of saying, so it says response to a demonstrable parking need. I'm suggesting taking out the language of the use or uses to be served and inserting something like, so it would respond to a demonstrable parking need for proposed new nearby development or increase usage and investment of nearby properties.
Okay, can you repeat that?
And Brad, I'm looking for your And, you know,
I mean,
everybody
I'm
needs-
kind of going to defer to if Amy's on, you know, or JR with respect to the language. You know, I don't just make sure that it meets council's approval.
Can you repeat what you had proposed, Judy?
Sure. So in number 1, instead take out of the use or uses to be served. And in its place, put for proposed new nearby development or increased use and investment of nearby properties.
It's a little bit subjective sounding.
Isn't that kind of broad?
Well, isn't the current language broad, I guess? I think.
Well, I'm reading the current language as saying, as I think the intent is that it serves a specific use or need.
I can't speak for Kelly, but you know, maybe this is something we want to hold off and make the changes to the language and come back at, I think you had there's another committee meeting scheduled to, because you know, I'd rather have it can be hard in the moment to figure out what the right words are. I know the cap rep is moving quickly, but I don't know that this, you know, 2-week delay would be an issue.
But I would say that let's just listen to what Judy is saying and try to understand and work through it if we can.
All right.
So my goal is that so you know, so there's the issue in Sheridan Hollow. There's potentially the issue for Albany Med. Oh, so they need more parking. Albany Med needs more parking, and there's all that space along Holland Avenue. Are we just going to have another parking lot after parking lot kind of situation without there being some added community benefit? You know, why are we doing this kind of thing? So, you know, perhaps it is a matter of adding a sentence to number 1 to make it clear that this is intended to support new development or new investment as opposed to, you know, or changing and improved uses of a property as opposed to simply adding to the convenience of workers, employees, you know, for example, and that kind of thing. The other thing I just want to note in this, Brad, I had a question about whether what would be required with regard to landscaping and buffering for these. Are these additional parking lots going to be subject to the general standards in 475-4 for parking lots?
That's correct.
Okay. So, you know, I just want to make sure that there's no question. As if people are going to be looking at this, I want to make sure that there's no question.
Kelly, is there a reason you feel the need to do it tonight? It's important to get the language clear.
Yeah. No, the thing is that it's not. I think it's important that we do it right. So it doesn't necessarily have to be done tonight. Although I would point out that we started all of this stuff before COVID, and so most of the documents and this conversation actually started, and this stuff got sent to us, you know, back a while ago, and we've been on hold because of COVID. But again, no rush.
You want to
go ahead, Brad.
Give ourselves a time limit and see if we can figure it out here in 5 minutes?
Yeah. I'm not sure that's going to happen.
Judy, shoot. What do you got?
Good.
I mean, actually, I'm comfortable. It's just as long as council is comfortable, because I know council and I went back a couple times on the language for this too to settle upon demonstrable parking need, because the way I had it written originally had some issues with it too. So
Yeah, and again, just real quick, I'd argue that what's going up around Albany Med and some of the other spots or places in the city, or if it's not similar. Just looking at the use of at least in this instance, of those lots and what they used to be, 2 and 3 family houses, and what they turned into when they've been sitting there. And I think this is a good use. It'd be helpful to the neighborhood. I know there was a couple of different design plans in the maps from CapRep on how they would use it or how they'd set it up. But I think that pretty much anything they do would be a benefit because it abuts the railroad tracks there, and you know, I don't see another use or anyone coming along to try to do something different with it. But I don't want to rush. So if we need to wait, we need to wait and work through it.
All right. Well, I'd like to, regardless, I'd like to move on unless, you know, you can hammer it out right this second.
So Richard, let's just spend like another 2 minutes on this if we can. Richard had said it was too broad. I'm wondering.
Maybe it isn't. I mean, whatever council is comfortable with, I'm okay with.
Another way potentially of shortening it is to say responds to a demonstrable need, parking need for of the new uses, the new use or uses to be served by new development or investment.
We could say responds to a demonstrable parking need of a new development proposal.
Okay, and in that case, so when somebody is simply changing, my CVS is going to become a Stewart's or something like that, would that require a new development proposal? I want there to be something significant.
I mean, we'd have to parse out what's significant and what's not. That means a lot of different things to different people. So that's why, and we try to tie it to words in the code that are defined. Nothing's jumping into my mind as to,
So maybe simply adding before use or uses, new, comma, improved use or uses to be served. So to make it clear that we're, again, to make it clear that we're looking for something new. So when the planning board, again, I'm trying to give the planning board some basis for making it, distinguishing between something that is, just blacktopping vacant property and renting it to state workers versus, something that is new and improved uses.
I don't think that serves what you're trying to do this right here, the new improve, because it's still vague as to terms of what's defined as new and improved.
All right. So I tried, and I think what we need to do is we need to table this for people to mull this over and come up with suggestions. And I leave it to JR and Amy to do that. So I make a motion to table this at this moment.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right, second by Tom. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Legislation is tabled. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on now to the resolution, Mike's resolution, 627120R as amended. All right, Mike, do you want to talk about the changes you made to this resolution?
Yes. In our discussion during the last committee meeting on July 16th, there was discussion focused around the wherefore be it resolved portion of the resolution. So I did speak with JR, and I attempted to put together what I thought were the points that were brought up for totally scrapping what I had proposed as the wherefore resolved and making it a multi-part resolved. And the first one, I relied on JR's advice because, quite frankly, I'm not a super expert on seeker, but it did strike me that having looked at, we had been provided with 20 years worth of contamination reports. And I think, or certainly I was, and I think the other committee members were struck with, particularly with the Clough Harbor report that the city commissioned, and that looked at a lead field, which was mostly concentrated in the city-owned property identified as 60B, but also clearly showed that it had migrated into the developer's property, 60. And they were definitely levels of lead that exceeded DEC guidelines. And yet, the Hennessy report didn't reflect any of that. The Hennessy report mostly looked at volatile and sub-volatile organics and pronounced it clean from that standard. So paragraph A basically says, have a state environmental quality review for the project and do a hard look at that seeker. I mean, not what those were JR's words. He can explain that better, but I'm relying on his language there. And then B, require independent soil tests where the Clough Harbor Associates 2006 and 2008 reports showed potential lead contamination infiltrated into 60 Calvin. And then C was a point that Judy had made. I know she had asked Brad, because as I remember that last discussion, Brad was pointing out, and he said, well, like we have areas like the Warehouse District and Sheridan Avenue, which are big areas, potential brownfield cleanup areas, and what if a developer is just looking to do a small piece of it? So Judy raised the issue of, well, first of all, what procedure do we have, or what code language should we propose, which would set up clear procedures in the USDO for development in any parts of the potential brownfield cleanup areas already identified in the USDO, or such areas which may become so identified. So I've attempted basically to incorporate the language that was suggested at our July 16th meeting. And then it was also suggested that we take the resolution and we refer it to DEC. So those are the changes which I made. I know we spent a lot of time, I think we spent about 45 minutes at the last meeting, and we reviewed all of the documents over the course of 20 years. So this whole thing, I'm not going to go into the whole history, but the whole thing, the whole looking at, the contamination issue started when the school district was going to propose a school for there, and then Brighter Choice, after the school district dropped it, Brighter Choice proposed a school for there, and they did their own studies. Now, I know Brad, I got something from Brad today, 60 Calvin, it involves a lot more than just the contamination issues, but he did attach a new Hennessy engineering report dated July 29th of 2020. But when I look at the summary of it, it still has the same conclusions, and that deals with volatile organics. And I don't see any mention of the lead, which Clough Harbor, at the behest of the city, said had likely infiltrated from city land onto this privately owned land. So I think it's important not just on 60 Common Avenue, but I think it's important that we ask the planning department to come up with language, for how they're going to deal with this in all 7 of the identified brownfield cleanup sites and any new ones which might come to our attention. So that's basically it.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Meeting.
Maybe we can get Fred. Do you want to comment on these amendments?
Yeah, I just saw the amendments today. I just wanted to, I didn't discuss it with council. Amy, I didn't know if you had any feedback before I speak to it.
Well, the first one, I'm not sure that it's necessary because we do seeker on this regardless. We have to follow seeker for, any action that's going to have an effect on the environment.
I'm sorry, Amy.
I can't hear you.
Could you speak up?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can, thank you.
Just the part A, I'm not sure that it's necessary because we would have to go through a seeker analysis on this regardless. If you're, I mean, is it JR, is it trying to say that you guys want the planning board to do a particular type of seeker decision? Or just do seeker? Because
Mike, what was it that you wanted? Because I explained to you that they have to do seeker regardless.
Oh, right. But the thing which I was questioning about was the applicant completed their form and it was basically all negative. Didn't mention the lead, didn't mention the fact that it even had been designated as a potential brownfield. So it was kind of, I'm not the expert on seeker, and I was listening with interest when Brad was talking about this with regard to the types of seeker, I guess when we were discussing the Sheridan Avenue ordinance. It just seems to me that seeker could be a kind of rote activity or it could be a serious activity. And I'm not as familiar with the case law, but I know, Chair, you had told me of some court cases where they actually, looked at it and said, no, this didn't take what they termed as a hard look at seeker. So I don't know. I think it's worth putting in there because it seemed to me that had 60 Calvin not been brought to our attention, probably the applicant's part 1 form would have been accepted without the quote hard look, which is what the courts really look for, which is what seeker really. So I guess I'm afraid of the situation where there might be something that's seeker in name only or seeker that really didn't get a lot of attention, particularly if it's a brownfield.
Well, this is a resolution too, so it's,
right.
Yeah. So why don't we look at the other 2, B and C?
Yeah. Well, with B, and Anthony DeThomas, he sat in on the meeting the last time, and he looked at that map which showed where the lead contamination comes into 60, his parcel. And he said, oh, well, there were too many trees. I didn't want to cut the trees down there to do the detailed testing.
Right.
But I think it rises to a level of importance that he should have done the detailed testing. And it looks from what I got from Brad today, that even the new Hennessy report doesn't refer to the lead that the Clough Harbor report pointed out.
Brad or Amy, do you want to comment on any of that?
I just wanted to mention, I do think it's a very good idea to have DEC look over this before the council moves on anything. DEC is really the responsible agency for dealing with contamination. And, the more that the city gets involved in sort of DEC matters, I think there is a potential that we're increasing our liability and also that we don't necessarily have the authority to be dealing with these sorts of things. So I think it's important to, to bring this up with DEC and to consult with them.
So what would we be bringing up with them?
I thought somebody mentioned here tonight that this would be referred to DEC.
Yeah, we did add
It's the last final.
Yeah. But we didn't do it.
It's only a matter of the resolution going to them. It's only a matter of the resolution.
Correct.
To them.
Yeah.
I think the resolution should be going to the planning board too.
We could add that. Yeah, in fact, that's a good idea. I would, I would ask to amend it to add that it also be referred to the planning board.
I will present that. The planning board will be discussing this at their workshop on the 11th. The testing in particular, we did include some recent language in our comment letter to have them do additional test pits in the northwest and southwest areas of the site. Those were the ones that were brought up at the prior council meeting. I think we all kind of need to agree upon, and Mike, we'd be happy to have your input at that meeting as to, what the appropriate level of additional test pits and locations. I kind of spoke to the two that came up, but generally I don't have any objections to the legislation with the exception of the whereas where, it appears the Albany Planning Board is preparing to override the 2030 plan's declaration of the site as a potential brownfield cleanup area. I don't think that's binding, or but I don't know that that's accurate either. And
well,
I don't know what.
Yeah, I mean they certainly haven't. So you think that's too conclusory?
I mean, I think override the 2030 plan's declaration. I think if that language could be altered a little bit. I mean, I don't.
Okay, give me a suggestion for altering
it. Appears that the planning board has not properly recognized the prior report. I mean, I'm trying to speak to what your feelings are, Mike, rather than what my feelings might be. But
okay,
how about the planning board has not addressed
sufficiently addressed. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, sufficiently addressed the 2030 plans declaration of the site as a potential brownfield cleanup area.
Yeah, that seems to be, that's stronger, I think.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. So Amy, when you were saying the DEC should receive a copy of this, were you talking about before it passes, after it passes? What were you referring to?
I mean, I think it would be beneficial before it passes, but if you want the planning board to see this next week, that's maybe a little difficult. But if the Common Council wants to continue to press these issues as something that the city needs to address, I think that it would be beneficial for everyone involved to really understand how contamination is regulated within the state of New York already, and what the city's potential role in that system is and should be.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, the city has to look at seeker reports that are given to it. In some cases, planning department or the council becomes a lead agency and gets their hands directly on seeker. And I don't think that's any usurpation of DEC authority. I mean, I think we put this in there more than we thought DEC might be interested in seeing it, in seeing, in seeing the development plans and seeing how the city is not only looking at this development, but looking at all developments in its potential brownfields. So that was kind of what I was trying to accomplish with it. And I think it's been tweaked, and I think our message is pretty straightforward and legitimate.
So
Amy, I hear you in what you're saying. I think this is, an ongoing process, and I think the goal is to express our concerns and the concerns of residents to make sure that the concerns being raised by the potential contamination of a portion of 60 Calvin Avenue are being addressed. And I think that is generally the intent here. Since you're saying that the first finding is one that is relatively unnecessary because you do a seeker review anyway. So I think that really, and C is one in which we've started, some discussions about that, and it doesn't require us, the city, to develop the process before this particular project moves forward, but kind of alerts the planning board to the idea and provide support to the planning board and the planning department for it to continue to investigate these concerns that have been raised by residents and the requests now made by the planning department. So I unless there's with the change that we've made with regard to the last whereas, if people are more comfortable with that, with the understanding that we are moving this forward to encourage continued examination of this issue and make sure that this issue is thoroughly vetted before that there is any approval of this particular project. I would like to move forward with this, and understanding that it's not particularly binding, as a resolution.
Any other comments on this? Alfredo.
I guess I'm just an on the ground kind of person. So I guess my question is to Brad, is the plan looking to have the developer do any additional testing in the areas that we specifically have concerns with? Specifically the areas that are closer to the border of the contaminated land.
Yes, I mean, the planning board is ultimately the responsible authority. They have to make the determination. Like I said, we'll discuss that on the 11th, but I did in my comment letter to the applicant as of just a handful of days ago, and I think the council did get a copy of that. It's a lengthy letter, so it's towards the end, but it does speak to additional test pits in the northwest and southwest locations, which are the areas adjacent to 60B Colvin that were discussed at this meeting. That said, that the Hennessy report, I think the main change in that is they mapped the locations that were previously explored by other engineers or environmental firms and put those on the map. So I kind of want to make sure that we're not missing anywhere else that anyone would like to see a test pit happen. So I thought that the upcoming meeting would be an opportunity for us all to get on the same page about what the expectations are for moving forward.
So Brad, I found it interesting. My recollection, I don't know where the overlying maps that Alfredo had pointed out, that some of the test pits did not seem to cover an area of that, I want to say that yellow circle or yellow blob that came over into the 60 Calvin Avenue. I actually thought that was in the middle of the rear of the property on 60 Calvin Avenue. So when you're saying in the northwest and southwest, I'm not sure
Northwest would be adjacent to the dog park, which I believe is the area where you see that sort of line coming across the map. The southwest we just noted looking at it, there didn't appear to have been any testing done in that particular quadrant. I know that the developer had stated it was relating to not being able to get in there because of the trees, and that was an issue that was brought up subsequently when he called me in response to the letter was, well, can I go in and cut trees now if you want me to do the test pits? And I said, well, I think the best thing would be for us to all discuss it at the upcoming planning board workshop, and they could grant whatever authority would be required for the clearing. It's subsequently been communicating that they think they may be able to get in there without doing additional clearing. However, again, I'll leave that to them to present, with respect to moving forward. But certainly our expectation that those additional areas should be looked at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I specifically just want to, when you make the point of you want to make sure they're all clear about where we want testing done, that specifically is the area that I want to make sure that they are doing a test that is where Alfredo noted that it overlaps, that there is a potential contamination area that comes from the city site onto 60 Calvin Avenue. And again, I want to emphasize, I understand we're talking potential, but since that was shown on that site, that in particular is one that I think should not be overlooked.
I'm pretty sure I know the area you're referring to, but you're welcome to send me an email referring to the specific location if you like.
Yeah, I don't have.
I need those overlapping maps. And
Yeah. I have a paper copy of the map.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an electronic. But Judy's right. Put it up in front of the camera. I don't know if that is showing up any good or not. But it does seem the yellow area does seem to be the middle of the of the west side of 60 Calvin.
Again, well, that's the area we're trying to get at. So again, that perhaps I misstated it as northwest southwest. Just maybe the western portion of the site is more appropriate. And in speaking with Bill Hennessy, who did the report, I think he was, I asked him to look into some standards that are generally applied to these sorts of tests. And I think he spoke to 8 pits as generally being more of a standard. They did 5 in their initial report. So I told him that I thought at least 3 more would be appropriate, but that we would, I kind of wanted to make sure that was, meeting everyone's expectations.
Yeah. And Brad, one of the Clough Harbor reports did actually show what they projected to be the depth under the soil of the lead. So I would think he should look at that. I mean, maybe he didn't drill deep enough. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but it seems to be hinting that some of this stuff was buried quite a bit. So anyway, that's. I really think that he should reference the Clough Harbor reports when he drills his next well as to where it is and how deep it is.
I'd be glad to have a follow-up conversation with you as well, Mike.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to have a follow-up conversation with you about the project in general, but on things other than just Brownfield. So at some point, I'll give you a call or email you.
Okay.
So Kathy, my understanding
I'm here talking,
okay.
And I'm muted. So I want to know if anyone else have any comments before we move forward on this. Tom?
Yeah, Brad, just real fast, I was curious about the property that's owned by the city. And I know it came up because of this project. Is there any plans that the city's going to do something about an existing brownfield? I was just, and a few council members had talked about that. Is that something we take care of, or it just sits there forever?
I don't know. I will. I did have a brief conversation with, I believe it was Randy Milano, who is somewhat familiar. So, I mean, I personally need to get a little bit up to speed as to why we stopped at some point, because it appears that we were moving in a direction and then that didn't move forward. So, I mean, that's something I can look into and certainly pass along as a concern, but I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments before we move forward? Okay. Does anyone have a motion they want to put on the floor?
Does it have to be a committee member?
It does, Mike.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would like to move Resolution 62.71.20R as amended on August 4th and further amended today. The further amendment today was to change the last whereas clause by deleting the words "is preparing to override the 2030 plan with the planning board has not sufficiently addressed the 2030 plan declaration of the site as potential brownfield cleanup. And then also to amend the final, be it resolved to add and the Albany City Planning Board. So a copy would then go to the Albany City Planning Board. So that would go out with a positive recommendation with those amendments.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, move forward with a positive recommendation to the council.
Thank
Thank you, everyone, for putting the time in. We had a lot on our agenda tonight. And I really
Kathy, when
appreciate
is our
your time.
next? Yeah, Kathy, when is our next planning?
We have a site visit next week for the 776 plan. And let's see. I don't know offhand what the next meeting is.
So I just
for the site visit.
Just the site visit.
Yes.
What's the date and time for the visit? Was that sent out? I don't remember.
It's 5:30 and it's next Thursday, the 13th.
Thank you.
And we meet there at the site. Okay.
I thought that Michelle was looking for a meeting. I forget what to talk about, but anyway, hopefully we will have another one where we, in the next couple of weeks, where we can bring back the parking lot amendments. Kelly's ordinance.
Oh, yes, and maybe in the meantime, there'll be something else along with that. We'll have to take a look.
We still have to look at the IDA and the CRC appointments. I think that might.
Yes, all right.
Yeah, and we still have the zoning map amendment, which I'll have done shortly.
Okay, so plenty to do. So we'll be in touch with regards to the date. Motion to adjourn?
Aye.
Joyce, and a second by Judy. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night, everybody.